Hello, my name is Myron Rogel, and on behalf of the Diocese of Saskatchewan, our partner Catholic Conscience, and Catholic Saskatchewan voters, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our interviews with Saskatchewan's political parties. Catholics have a duty to vote through prayerful and thoughtful discernment of their own conscience. In these interviews, we ask representatives from Saskatchewan's political parties questions from the perspective of Catholic social teaching across a wide range of issues critical to the future of our province. We hope these conversations will help Saskatchewan Catholic voters reflect on their vote. Remember that Election Day is October the 26th, so make a plan to vote and vote with the common good of all at heart. To find more resources like these interviews to help you discern your vote, catholicconscience.org/Saskatchewan 2020. Together, let's pray for the future of our province and for all the voters as we collectively determine who will govern this place we all love to call home. St. Joseph, pray for us.
Why should Catholics vote for your party in this election?
Well, Buffalo Party stands for freedom and the rights of Saskatchewan underneath Confederation and the British North American Act. I'm a Christian myself, and I fully believe that the rights of the people have come before the government, and the people need to believe in their governments doing what's best for them with their rights and their freedoms, and that the government needs to stay out of business and they need to stay out of religion. The religion has the right to govern themselves. There needs to be separation of church and state. That means where the state stays out of the business of religions.
Well, I was actually raised in the Catholic Church. My family are a mix of Catholics and Anglicans, and I have actually been part of both of those faiths. And I think that the core values in the party were different than other parties, so much on legislation and that sort of thing. We actually literally base our party on values of ecological wisdom, nonviolence, social justice, sustainability, participatory democracy, and respect for diversity. To me, those are core Catholic values. I really love Pope Francis, and I've been reading all of his announcements and recent works and literally sobbing with gratitude and relief that I feel like there is a social justice Pope right now, and that so much of what Pope Francis is saying speak to green values. And I feel that although politics can be an uncomfortable thing for people of faith, I also think that when we don't speak up and when we don't get involved in politics, then we're allowing others to decide the values of our society. So I do feel that some of the papal messages have encouraged people to get involved, and that the core principles of the Green Party align very nicely with the core principles of the Catholic Church. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Alison, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Nicole Sarauer, and for the last 4.5 years, I've had the privilege of being the MLA for Regina-Douglas Park. I'm also a member of the Catholic Church here in Regina. I believe we're called by a higher power, whether we choose to call it God or something else, to serve our community and make our world a better place for everybody. That belief in service is what led me to my work prior to being elected at Pro Bono Law Saskatchewan, which is a legal services charity that helps vulnerable people who can't afford a lawyer and don't qualify for legal aid. That belief also led me to serve as a member of the Regina Catholic School Board from 2012 to 2016. And that belief led me to seek to be elected as the New Democratic candidate for Regina-Douglas Park in 2016, and then as the re-elected candidate, hopefully in 2020, under the leadership of Ryan Miley, who is also himself a member of the Catholic Church. I'm seeking re-election as a New Democrat because I am concerned about the path our province is heading down in terms of cuts to public health care and education, which are a bad idea even when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. I believe that government has a responsibility to create local jobs for local workers on local projects, and that we have a responsibility to look after the most vulnerable among us and be good stewards of the environment in which we all live. Many of these things are what motivated my decision to run as a New Democrat, and they're among the topics that we'll be discussing today, so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to address them. And thanks again for the opportunity to be here.
We are the party that recognizes individual liberty, including that of the unborn, including that of the ill. We have a platform that's based upon giving more voice to all people who wish to champion change and wish to bring change to our province. We address in our platform the rights of healthcare workers to conscientiously object to labor, to work that goes against their moral compass. We address issues of age of consent for parents to permit procedures on minor children. Currently, that does not exist. I believe that we are the only, I believe, quite frankly, that I am, and I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that I am the only pro-life leader of a political party in Saskatchewan at this time. So I think that I have the moral and the I don't want to say I have the moral compass to do it, but I just want to say that I have the beliefs of the church at hand. I'm not Catholic. I am a practicing Anglican, but I do believe ultimately that we are in a case where the Word of God must be adhered to in our government.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to provide some opening comments. There's certainly some interesting and important issues that have been raised in the questions that you've been putting forward, and I've heard a number of these at the doorsteps in our neighborhood when we've been going door to door. And I've spent a considerable questions and considering them in the context of not just the election, but in the context of the government generally and our work that we have done in the past and what we hope to do in the future. And I also appreciate the fact that 2 minutes isn't really a lot of time to talk about some of these issues in depth, and I wanted to provide the opportunity to the Archbishop and the other bishops to engage in a further conversation after the election on these very important issues. Certainly, I'm not shy of that. Well, the role of any government is to provide and to protect its citizens. And on the issue of provision, we need a strong economy, and the economy is really the currency by which we do everything. It's the focus, and that's why we've had a focus in this election and in our term as government on the economy and on the importance of balancing their budget. We very much believe that government, like businesses, like families, need to live within their means. And I don't believe, nor does the government believe, that burdening our children and our grandchildren with unmanageable debt is good for the future of them or good for the future of a province. And that's why I think the economy really demands some discipline. So I believe in investing in those things, having the economy as our currency, and investing in those things that are important to the people of Saskatchewan: health and education and our safety net, and for those that are the most vulnerable in our community. And that's really the key in this election, is to focus on our economy, make sure we grow our economy, because it's a strong economy that gives us the resources to be able to do what we need to focus on, and that's as I say, education, healthcare, social services, and the most vulnerable. And so that's really why I think the people of Saskatchewan have had faith in this government since we had the privilege of forming government, and why I would ask for the further support of the people of Saskatchewan in this election.
Life and dignity. Catholics believe that at the moment we are conceived, we have been made in the image and likeness of God. Each of us is an incomparable, irreplaceable, unique child of God. And as such, we are each imbued with an inherent and inviolable dignity. This dignity of all human life is the heart of Catholic social teaching, and it must be respected across the entirety of a person's natural life, from conception to youth, to adulthood and professional life, through to their elderly years and the end of their life. All of us are born from God and spend our lives returning to Him. Given this inherent dignity, Catholics care deeply about the sanctity of human life. Recognizing the division of powers between the federal and provincial governments, would your party support any of the following policies to ensure the protection of the sick, marginalized, elderly, and vulnerable persons in our province? Requirements for parental consent to abortion procedures on minors, conscience and employment protection for all healthcare professionals and institutions whose personal or corporate ethos does not permit them to be complicit in the taking of human life, and adequate funding for palliative care in all areas of the province, and increased provision of hospice end-of-life care, not including euthanasia.
The Buffalo Party does believe in that people who are the most vulnerable need the most protection from the government. Those who not have the need or necessity for protection or because they're vulnerable or they're sickly, the healthy individuals out there know how to manage their own life. It's unfortunate that a province such as Saskatchewan, and a very free, supposed to be the most free province and the freest country in the world, dictates on how professionals are able to manage a profession, because their own personal lives and their personal beliefs would hold them back on some choices. But if you want to be as part of this job, then you're not allowed to have a personal conscience. Our Confederation and our Charter of Rights and Freedom says you have the right for conscious thought. Government should not overstep that boundary whatsoever. And conception, the date of conception is the act of a miracle right there. And until the end of life, you are still a creation, and this is your time on this earth. And Buffalo Party believes that people have the right to make their own choices in their lives, and they have to value the choices of those who are not able to speak on behalf of their own as well.
Well, once again, I'm going to say that one of the ways that the media portrays the Greens is voicing questions exactly the way that just happened here in terms of legislation. And what I would instead suggest is that the Greens are putting forward policy to bring in a guaranteed livable income. My mother had me out of wedlock. She ended up deciding to keep me despite coming from a very religious family, and there was quite a bit of controversy when I was born. To this day, there are members of my step family and adopted family and my birth family who really struggle with the nature of how I was brought into the world. And the Greens believe that one of the best ways that we can support dignity of life and nonviolence is by making sure that people in my mother's situation are properly cared for. And so I really feel that pushing a guaranteed livable income is key. It's really upsetting to me as someone who grew up in extreme poverty in a single parent household, and I to remain married to my ex-husband, but he unfortunately did bring another partner into the situation, and so I was forced to be a single mother. But I certainly think that making sure that people have the supports they need is really, really key. When I was going to a Catholic high school, one of the big things that I always saw as such a glaring inequity is that how is it that, when people are telling Catholics, if you want to push these kinds of policies, then you need to financially support everyone. I think that we need to vote in policies that would make sure that people are looked after with dignity. We need to see a $2,000 a month, just like the CERB that the federal government decided was the base amount to live. This would allow people to know that they could be caregivers, that they could look after everyone as needed. Right now, $1,200 a month is what most people on assistance or injury protection seniors are actually receiving, and that amounts to $40 a day. I challenge anyone at all to try to live off that, because my mother did my entire life, and it's impossible.
Thank you so much for the question. I do appreciate it. The Saskatchewan NDP support a woman's right to safe and timely access to all health services, which include abortion. We believe that decisions related to this matter should be made by a woman and her health care provider, and we do not support the requirement for parental consent. The goal is to reduce rates of abortion and eliminate rates of abortion in Saskatchewan. We believe the focus should be on education, teaching about healthy relationships, sex education, and access to women's health centers, including contraception. Any health professionals that are working within our publicly funded healthcare system needs to ensure timely access to healthcare services. In 2019, we were happy to see the Sask Party agree to pay for the abortion pill, Mifigai Miso, to Saskatchewan residents. In regards to palliative care, we fully support expanding access to care across the province. Our healthcare system has been struggling with understaffing for years, and we've heard from many people that they're not able to get the services that they need, which include palliative care. This is why we're committed to investing in healthcare, and we have a plan to invest $100 million in healthcare to hire hundreds of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals.
I was personally shocked when I learned that there were no requirements in Saskatchewan for parental consent on medical procedures for minors. And so we actually had some very frank discussions within our party about this. And we have in our policies, and vis-a-vis through our policies, we have in our platform that there must be a requirement for consent of any medical procedure to be performed on a minor who's under the age of 16. So that addresses the first one, I believe. We have in our platform document a provision for conscience and employment protection for healthcare procedures whose whose personal beliefs will conflict with the provision of euthanasia or any other medical procedure that goes against their personal beliefs. I believe that we are the only party that is offering that particular protection. And it's our position that we must manage our finances wisely so we can afford health care, which is affordable to all, in particular palliative care and long-term care. We have met in our platform that we will pledge an additional 1,500 beds and appropriate staffing levels for those 1,500 beds in long-term care. But we also realize that to protect healthcare in general and for greater investments into all departments, palliative care included, we need to manage our provincial finances properly so that we can adequately finance and support all healthcare in Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much for that. So this question was dealing primarily with some issues of conscience. I can tell you that we understand as a government that the people have diverse opinions on the matters of conscience. The government, our party, respects the laws of Canada and the 1988 Supreme Court decision on the rights of individuals to access certain health services, including abortion services. Under the Canada Health Act, the provincial medical insurance plans are required to provide coverage for services that are considered medically necessary, and the decision of medically necessary, what's medically necessary, really lies between a patient and his physician. Our perspective on this is neither the government nor a minister of the government is in a position to interfere with that decision that's made by a physician in consultation with his patients, where those are determined to be necessary by that conversation. Our party certainly appreciates that medical assistance in dying is a deeply personal matter for many people. It's a complex issue that has implications for patients and families and healthcare providers and health policy and programs. Our goal has been a balanced one. It includes providing appropriate safeguards for vulnerable individuals while respecting the wishes and personal convictions of patients, families, healthcare providers, and health facilities. The policies of healthcare institutions and the personal beliefs of healthcare practitioners on this issue are to be respected. We very much believe in the sanctity of conscience when it comes to these things. Healthcare institutions that are owned by a religious organization are free to set policy preventing the administration of medically assisted in dying on their premises. As well, healthcare professionals and care providers in Saskatchewan are free to follow their personal convictions with respect to providing medical assistance in dying, provided they meet their professional obligations as set out by their respective regulatory bodies. As I've said, we'll continue to consider, and we have in the past, whether or not legislation is necessary. We've had some conversations in the past about this, but certainly the respect that this government has when it comes to the sanctity of conscience is something that we will continue to support and to continue to advocate for, and make sure that people are protected when it comes to their conscience, when it comes to these kinds of decisions.
Stewardship and Creation. As Catholics, we believe that humanity's relationship with creation and the creatures of the earth requires the exercise of responsibility. It is not a freedom of arbitrary and selfish exploitation. Pope Francis has been clear that the sinful exploitation of our natural world and resulting ecological crises, like climate change, threaten the existence of the human family. Living our vocation to be protectors of God's handiwork is essential to a life of virtue, says Pope Francis. It is not an optional or secondary aspect of our Christian experience. This is why Catholics are deeply engaged in the work of building more sustainable communities. How does your political party propose to achieve an ecologically sustainable future for Saskatchewan, to protect the God-given dignity of coming generations and our fellow children of God around the world?
We believe that government's job is to be the servants of the people. And government needs to get out of the way of the people. We need to have less restrictions on the people and let people make their choices in their own life. We have to hold morals and standards, and the basis of all morals and standards is religion. We need to protect and preserve the current environment that we have in the future, but there's also, God created this planet to evolve on its own. That's why we have seasons. That's why we have weather. Why there is earthquakes, there is tornadoes, there is hurricanes. All this is out of our control. And as humans, naturally believe that we need to be the ones in full control. And if you're a true Christian, you have to understand that you aren't in control. You control so little except for your own personal life. The rest is up to natural ecological habitat that was made by God. And the Canadian energy that we have in Canada, what we produce is the most ecological and ethical on the whole entire planet. We will uphold our rights as a province to continue to maintain and produce the most ethical oil and gas and natural resources in the world.
I have dedicated every living, breathing moment of my life to ecological wisdom and sustainability. Before becoming the leader of the Saskatchewan Green Party, I have protested on the steps of the legislature numerous times a week. I've been involved with climate justice actions and helping with environmental groups literally my entire life. To me, the respect for sustainability and diversity speaks to the heart of what we are as human beings. We're caretakers on this earth, and it's something that I feel that many people have forgotten. We have a responsibility to all the creatures that share this planet with us and the planet itself. I am absolutely dedicated to ensuring that I am a strong voice in the legislature every single day, just like Elizabeth May was federally. Right now, we don't have any Greens elected on the prairies, but upon election, I intend to make sure that every single day I am pushing for 60% carbon reductions in our atmosphere within 4 years. I want to see a solar panel on every roof in this province. I intend to push for 100% renewable energy within 10 years. This is what all the leading scientists say is needed in order to hold our beautiful planet that we all hold dear to 1.5 degrees. The other parties don't have set target limits on carbon emissions, and the Greens really want to follow the Paris Accord agreements and make sure that we reach those set target limits, because that's what it's going to take to protect biodiversity. If we don't protect biodiversity, we're losing literally thousands of species every single day upon this planet. And again, as caretakers of the earth, we are failing if we allow that to keep happening. Our prairie ecosystem is unique on this planet. A lot of people don't realize, because they kind of look out at the natural prairies and say, where is the beauty in that? But I would say, in the words of Trevor Harriott, that our prairie ecosystem is one of the most precious biodiversity spots on Earth.
Thank you so much for the question. And I'd start by saying that as Saskatchewan New Democrats, we agree strongly with the sentiment of Pope Francis that you had alluded to in your question. We've been concerned by the Sask Party government's failure to provide what should be a right balance between both resource development and the growing need to fight climate change. We have a huge opportunity in Saskatchewan with the best wind and solar resources in the country, and enormous possibilities in geothermal, biomass, and more. We want to focus on moving to 50% renewables and non-emitting electricity by 2030, with a legislated target of 100% emissions-free electricity by 2050. We want to make ambitious investments in energy efficiency to make us a leader, instead of continuing to lag behind the rest of Canada in developing our green technology sector. We believe and strongly feel that we need to support the protection of wetlands and grasslands in Saskatchewan. We also want to do what we need to do to empower people, small businesses, municipalities, and First Nations and Métis communities to generate their own power and create a distributed energy grid. We also want to work with Sask Power to make Saskatchewan a leader in geothermal power production. We feel strongly that climate change is something that needs to be addressed immediately, while at the same time supporting the industries that we have in Saskatchewan. But we need to do this because we need to ensure that our communities will be sustainable for the future, and that our environment will be sustainable for the next generation.
As Conservatives, we believe it is incumbent upon all of us to conserve our resources and to protect our province and our environment. We would achieve some of these goals through things like proper forestry management. Currently, we are doing very well in this province in terms of using forestry, for example, properly. And we currently use about 48% of our forest for harvest, which is within the realm of sustainability. However, one of the issues in our forestry issue is that there is no use for the pulp from the wood that's being used, and as a result, we're getting large buildups of piles, actually, of pulp in our northern areas, and these are very unsightly. They're not very safe. They're a hazard. So this is where we must, as Conservatives, look at these types of issues and say, what can we do with that? And one of the things that we can do with these accumulated piles of tailings up in the north is to use it for cogeneration for electrical power. We also would look at partnering and strengthening our Crown Corporation, SaskPower, with some private companies that have specialty and expertise in areas such as renewable energy and how to use that, how to increase the availability of renewable resources to create power in our province. We need to look at how companies, and we need to impress upon them that if they are shutting down an operation, whether it's in the oil wells or whether it's a potash mine, that we have adequate safeguards in place so that the corporations are responsible for cleaning up the tailings and the unused oil wells, for example. So we would be very conscious of that.
So the Saskatchewan Party government has made a climate change plan called Prairie Resilience. Our climate change plan focuses on the resilience and on reducing emissions. It will reduce our emissions while maintaining our economic competitiveness with no carbon tax. By 2030, our plan is expected to reduce GHG emissions by 12 million tons. And that climate change plan is broader and bolder than a single tax, and we believe it will achieve better results for the people of Saskatchewan. Since starting up, our carbon capture and storage facility has captured 3.3 million tons of CO2, the equivalent of taking approximately 750,000 cars off Saskatchewan roads. We've sequestered nearly 11 or almost 12 million tons of carbon in 2016 due to changes in tillage practices, agricultural practices, a reduction in summer fall, and conversion of crops to forage. So our plan is to, our goal is to up to 50% renewable energy by 2030 through Saskatchewan's growth plan. We need to have a responsible plan to transition from renewables, noting, of course, that we have a resource-based economy, and our economy is very much based on our resource industry. So moving toward renewables, ensuring that we have adequate base load to support those renewables, to make sure that the people of Saskatchewan can have a reliable and dependable access to energy, whether that's electricity or natural gas, as we go forward. So certainly ensuring that we are responsible in our climate responsibilities, noting climate change is real, that we need to do what we can in terms of enhancing our commitment to renewable energy, all at the same time ensuring that we're being responsible about it, noting that, as I've said in my opening comments, the economy, our economy is based on a resource-based economy, so we have to ensure that as we move forward with a transition to renewables, that we're respectful of our economy and respectful of the need to ensure that we continue to grow that economy.
Community and the common good. Catholic thinking on community and the common good is rooted in the principle of subsidiarity and participation. Caritas Canada says, subsidiarity holds that the functions of government should be performed at the lowest level possible, as long as they can be performed adequately. When they cannot, higher levels of government must intervene. This principle goes hand in hand with participation, the principle that all peoples have a right to participate in the economic, political, and cultural life of society, and in the decisions that affect their community. This starts with the family, the most important unit of society according to Catholic social teaching, and also forms the heart of the Catholic commitment to education and the development of the full person, spiritually, morally, intellectually, and socially. How does your party propose to ensure the continued right of Catholic education in Saskatchewan for Catholics and for others who choose it? And how will you strengthen education of the whole person for coming generations?
Buffalo Party believes in school choice. You have the right to choose what form of education you want for your child. It states right in the Confederation that you can't separate religious schools from public schools, and they're starting to grade the lines right now in government. Government's job is, the smaller the government, the freer the people, and we need to stay out of the way and let people manage their own houses, and we need to let municipal governments manage their own municipalities. But we also have to make sure that no one's rights and freedoms are ever interfered upon. And Buffalo Party stands for your rights and freedoms. You have the right to choose which school you want to go to, whether it's a Catholic school or, like my son goes to, a Christian school in Saskatoon. You have the right to make those choices, and without fear of discrimination or scrutiny because others don't like your choice. That is not their place, and we will uphold parents' right to choose first and foremost.
Well, another one of those 6 core values that I mentioned at the beginning of our Zoom is participatory democracy. And the other thing that the Greens believe in very, very strongly is freedom of religion and everyone having the right to express who they are and what their beliefs are. That is one of our core values. And I believe so strongly in participatory democracy and grassroots participation that every single piece of what's on the internet, the flyers that the Greens put out from the minute I became leader on February 29th, not that long ago, was my phone number. My personal phone number, not some phone that I hand off to volunteers on a frequent basis. When you call the Saskatchewan Green Party, 1-306-561-8880, it's actually my phone. If I miss your call because I'm on another one, then I call you back. And people have been absolutely shocked when they call and they actually reach me directly. I believe so strongly that, of course, people need to be able to have parental rights. They need to be able to decide what they feel is best for their children and live their core values. The Greens don't believe in whipped votes, unlike other political parties. This is actually key and really, really important and confuses a lot of people. But while the Green Party has policy, unlike every other political party out there, if my MLAs disagree and wish to vote against what I put forward in the legislature, we allow that. So we are completely open to the idea that people can actually lobby every single Green MLA. And that those MLAs, if they are convinced of whatever lobbying group comes forward, if all those people vote against the leader of the Greens is not in charge. The people who make up the party are. I am just the voice of the party. So where other political parties, the leader sets policy, I am the voice of participatory democracy. So please feel welcome to reach out. I've taken 3 calls before our Zoom this morning.
Thank you for the question. And as a previous Catholic school board trustee, this is an issue that I feel very passionately about. New Democrats stand firmly in support of a publicly funded education system, which in Saskatchewan includes both our public system and our separate system. Unfortunately, what we've seen from the Sask Party are cuts to classrooms, which have resulted on growing classes and kids falling through the cracks. We've repeatedly said that it's more than ever important that we keep our class sizes small so kids can be safe. While public health officials are telling us to reduce gathering sizes in homes to 15, these cuts have meant that kids and teachers are still being cramped into classrooms of 35 kids or more. Saskatchewan New Democrats have worked with parents, educators, and public health experts to come up with a plan that would put our kids first. We will act quickly to invest the money needed to keep kids safe and to make sure our education system is ready for the challenges ahead. This will include the investment that would be needed to hire 1,000 teachers, 750 educational assistants, and 400 custodial staff.
The right to education is a sacred right, I think, in Canada and in Saskatchewan. And the PC Party believes and respects the historical right to a Catholic education in Saskatchewan. We will resist movements such as One Education, which is one of those organizations that seeks to combine all school divisions into one large secular school division, and we would protect the right of of separate education in Saskatchewan. We have been concerned with the centralization when it comes to protecting all education. We have been concerned with the centralization of education decisions in Regina with both school systems, and we would advocate for more decision making to be returned to the local school boards and local school boards. And we believe if government conserves its tax dollars, and I spoke about this earlier, if we conserve our tax dollars and not spend unnecessarily, we'll be able to better afford the things that really matter: healthcare, education. So that would be our focus going forward. Less intervention in the economy, more local autonomy for education, and better funding models.
I'm very, very supportive, of course, with respect to ensuring Catholic education in Saskatchewan. The government of Saskatchewan stood shoulder to shoulder with Catholic boards across this province with respect to the Theodore decision. We were very pleased to see a unanimous decision of the Court of Appeal reversing the decision of Justice Lay from the Court of Queen's Bench. You'll also know that we were the government that introduced a School Choice Act to ensure that in the event the legislation was sustained at the Court of Appeal and perhaps ultimately at the Supreme Court, that we had legislation in place that protects Catholic education, including the notwithstanding clause as part of that legislation. So we're very proud of the fact that we've stood with Catholic boards across this province in defense of Catholic education across Saskatchewan. We will continue to do that. Leave has not been granted. They've asked for leave. The public boards of the province have asked for leave to go to the Supreme Court on the decision. That leave hasn't been granted yet, but you can rest assured that the government of Saskatchewan will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with Catholic boards of education around this province in defense of Catholic education.
Option for the poor and vulnerable. In the words of Pope Francis, money must serve, not rule. This statement puts simply the Catholic belief that our economy must be at the service of people, especially the most vulnerable and economically fragile among us, and not for the sake of accumulating wealth. Catholics are called to remember Jesus' own words: "What we do to the least among us, we do to him." And for too many people in Saskatchewan, a living wage and dignified work which supports a family are beyond reach. The result is that many are unjustly excluded from full participation in our society. What does your party propose to do to ensure a living and fair wage is available for all Saskatchewan's workers, to address the injustice of poverty in our province, and to ensure that our economy serves people rather than the other way around?
Liberal Party stands on the premise that we need to tax everyone less. Right now, even a middle-class worker whom they make close to 6 figures a year, by the time the taxes come out as a family household, there's very little money left over because they're taxed at a very high amount. Myself, between my wife and myself, we're already taxed well over 50% after you pay your PST, your GST, and your income taxes. And that's not fair, and that's not right for anybody. We're forcing people to live in poverty because we overtax, burden our people. And by raising taxes, by making a living wage, is just going to be more suppression on those who are trying to work as well. What we have to do is lower the taxes to make it more feasible for people to be able to afford goods and produce and their monthly expenses, And we need to look at raising the minimal taxable income that is right now in Saskatchewan. Right now it's $16,320, and that needs to be raised. And no one can live off of $16,320. We need to raise that. We want to look at reducing income tax. And in the future, Buffalo Party wants to look at eradicating income tax. Countries that have eradicated income tax see the highest amount of people who are out of poverty, and they see the highest amount of wealthy individuals in the world, and their economies are booming, and their people are, almost all their people are in really good state. Very few people are below any poverty line, because you do not tax the people around the world, or in their countries at least. Best way to do it is by reducing taxation on the people. And the only way to do that is reduce the size of government.
One of the main platform planks of the Saskatchewan Green Party this election is a guaranteed livable income. Something that the Greens have long pushed for in almost every province and federally. We saw a situation with the CERB right when COVID-19 happened, where Justin Trudeau did bring in what was just short of a living wage. And I actually felt sorry for him, because if he had just gone a little bit further and actually introduced a guaranteed livable wage, then we would have seen him not have to stand up every single day apologizing for what I call his leaky boat. He would stand up and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I seem to have forgotten to include seniors who have contributed all these years of their working lives to the economy. They're not included in the CERB. I better put out something special for them." Then the next day, "Oh, I seem to have forgotten students. You know, the children that you're talking about who are going to university right now. We better put something in place for them." Then they had to announce that there needs to be special for your small business, disability, pretty much everything that you could imagine. He had to stand up and apologize for forgetting in the CERB. I'm instead wanting to bring in a guaranteed livable income. This would look after all members of our society with dignity. It would ensure that caregivers, those who are put in a position that I have been in, by the way, myself, my mother, when I was 24 years old, had to have surgery where all of her large intestine was taken out. And this was very, very difficult for my family. I moved home to care for her full time, and there is no wage available in Saskatchewan to help with that. So while trying to be a full-time caregiver, and I had 6 younger brothers and sisters, of course, my mother was unable to work, and I was trying to figure out how we were going to make an income through this. I did manage, but I just think, for people in that position, caregivers, stay-at-home parents, the elderly, people who are injured, having a guaranteed livable income that would provide for people with dignity. One of the things I dislike about our current social safety system is it requires people to justify every month that they're still injured.
Thank you for the question. I think this is an issue that the Saskatchewan New Democrats walk hand in hand with the Catholic Church on. I think it's clear more than ever that we need to put people first. We can't afford more cuts, and the people of Saskatchewan need to know how they're going to put food on the table and pay their bills. During the election campaign, the Premier raised the minimum wage by 13 cents. Saskatchewan has the lowest minimum wage, and the best that they could do to raise it was 13 cents, which frankly can't even buy you a Timbit in this economy. I'm very proud to be part of a team that has committed to a $15 an hour minimum wage and to be making life more affordable for Saskatchewan people. We have far too many people in our province who are working but still have to utilize the food bank because they're not making enough money. You can't work full time on minimum wage as it is here and be able to pay the rent and pay for food and pay for everything else that's needed. And we have, which is why we're so supportive of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, because nobody should be working and not being able to pay their bills. In Saskatchewan, we know that we all do better when we remember that we're all in this together, which is why we've committed to $5 million to creating a poverty reduction strategy and increasing supports for housing. Will the Sask Party take large corporate donations and ensure that their insider friends are taken care of? We want to ensure that money is taken out of politics and that money isn't dictating who our political leaders are, which is why we would like to see corporate and union donations be eliminated from Saskatchewan politics. We've also proposed a wealth tax, which will make the ultra-rich pay just a little bit more so that we can have the supports that we need in our communities. We need a government that puts people first, and I'm confident that Ryan Miley and the NDP will do that.
As a government and as a party, we can do a lot to make sure our economy serves our own citizens first. In 2010, the government of Saskatchewan signed on to a program called the New West Trade Partnership Agreement. Under this deal, the government has forced municipalities, universities, school boards, anybody who receives provincial funding to tender all their contracts out of province. How this relates to this particular topic is that it has actually resulted in the loss of some very well-paying jobs in our province to other jurisdictions. And we just don't think that that's right. So one of the first things that we would do is actually remove Saskatchewan from this particular deal so that we as a government can actually give the option to our municipalities and anybody who is under the auspices of this deal the opportunity to offer the jobs to Saskatchewan companies and workers first. We would also cut the PST off of new home construction, children's clothing, insurance, and used cars. And we would advocate for SAD benefits under the SAD program to be tied to a floor closer to the minimum wage. We have too many people in our economy that are living below the poverty level, and we believe that many of these initiatives will help in that respect.
Well, since forming government back in 2007, we have increased the minimum wage 12 times. It's now approximately 40% higher than it was in 2007. We were the first government to index minimum wage to inflation, which allows minimum wage to automatically keep up with the rising cost of living each year. More importantly, and I think this has to be considered in the context of the minimum wage, the tax reductions brought in by the government, by our party, since we've had the privilege of forming government, means that residents have one of the lowest tax burdens in Canada. So, notwithstanding the minimum wage, certainly making life more affordable for those at lower incomes has been one of the things that this government has done by, again, having one of the lowest tax burdens in the country. We took 112,000 low-income people off the provincial tax rolls, and we've created the low-income tax credit. We've increased that by $100 per adult and $40 per child. We're also among the lowest personal and corporate income tax rates in the country. In every personal income tax bracket, Saskatchewan families are paying less personal income tax now than they did a decade ago. We've also released in 2016 our poverty reduction strategy, which contains a number of initiatives which are going to benefit those affected by poverty and aims to reduce the number of residents who experience poverty by 2 years by more than 50% by the end of 2025. There's 6 key areas in that strategy: income security, housing and homelessness, early childhood development and childcare, which I'm particularly proud of as the Minister of Education, being responsible for that area, education, skills training and employment, health and food security, and vulnerable families and individuals. And so we've made every effort to focus on those. We've implemented an early years plan through the Ministry of Education, which again I'm very proud to be responsible for. We've initiated the redesign of the Ministry's Social Service Income Assistance Program with the assistance of the Ministry of Social Services, and we've expanded housing for hard-to-house individuals in this province. So I think a record that we're very proud of.
Rights and responsibilities. Catholic social teaching recognizes a wide range of rights inherently owed to every person in respect of their dignity as a child of God. A right to life, a right to live in a united family, and in a moral environment conducive to growth, the right to share in the work which makes wise use of the earth's material resources, the right to food and drinkable water, to housing and personal security. The Church also teaches that human rights are indissolubly linked to human duties, underlining the contradiction inherent in affirming rights without acknowledging corresponding responsibilities. Those, therefore, who claim their own rights, yet altogether forget or neglect to carry out their respective duties, are people who build with one hand and destroy with the other. In this way, working towards the common good of all is a responsibility for each and every one of us and every institution in Saskatchewan society. In that spirit, how does your party propose to encourage and enable the great breadth of civil society in Saskatchewan to employ their time, talents, and treasure in the service of the common good and promote the full participation of every Saskatchewan person in our society?
We believe that the only way to preserve rights and freedoms is for government to get smaller. The larger the government, the less freedoms are on the people. We want to ensure that people are free first. The rule of law is to preserve the rights and freedoms, and it's your responsibility as individuals in this province and in this country to uphold that. We have skewed the lines too much between government and individual rights. It continues to happen over and over again. We see it through history has taught us ever since the biblical times that the more the government says, trust us, we have your best interest in mind, the less and less freedoms and the more restraints are on the people. Buffalo Party believes that we need to have a smaller government, and by doing so, you will have more freedoms. But it's always in the hands of those individuals and their responsibility as a democracy to preserve it, to get out and vote. And it's your responsibility to uphold your rights and freedoms, because the government will wants to hold those back. Because the freer the people, the less control the government can have on the people. You have a right to drinking water. You have a right to have a house, but you got to have, it's your responsibility to work for it. There is inherent rights that should be provided to the people, and the first and foremost in rights of people is their freedom. Everything else needs to come second. Even the Hebrew Bible, for the Ten Commandments, the first commandment is, I am the Lord thy God, who freed you from slavery and bondage. God wants us to be free. That's the first and foremost thing that he wants of all his people. Buffalo Party's position that you are free first, and we will preserve your freedoms.
I absolutely believe in participatory democracy and social justice. Again, part of our core values. It's absolutely important that we reform the electoral system in Saskatchewan. Right now, we have a Westminster system called First Past the Post that has a lot to do with horse racing in this province. The way that the First Past the Post system was set up is it was actually decided in the late 1800s that our current election system in Saskatchewan wasn't fair enough for horses, so it was outlawed by the Horse Jockey Association. A post would be put in the ground, and the first horse to get past that at 35% would win. Most of the civilized world, most of Europe, actually has employed a system of one vote equals one vote, a system called proportional representation. The great thing about proportional representation is that it means that your voice, the Catholic voice, definitely gets reflected. Right now, 35% of the population can end up electing and have 100% of the power. And it can actually happen that the majority of votes don't get reflected in who ends up as premier. Having a system of proportional representation encourages all parties to work together. I am absolutely dedicated to the idea of working across party lines. I actually have friends in Liberal Party, NDP, and even the Sask Party, because you know what? There are good people there. And we need to work in relationship with others to make sure that those at the lowest economic level, the most oppressed in our society, are represented in our government and feel like they have a direct link to the election process. Right now, one of the things is that 30% of people that don't vote or tell me that politics mean nothing to them. It needs to be something that we all do together.
Thank you so much for the question, and I think a lot of the answer that I gave in the previous question would also be relevant to this one as well. So I won't go into what I've already said, but just know that we are very committed to putting people first, supporting human rights, encouraging equity, reducing inequality, addressing structural racism, and undoing the damage of colonialism in residential schools. That's what our priorities of Saskatchewan New Democrats, and I think Catholics and Saskatchewan New Democrats share those priorities. Now is the time more than ever to invest in each other and help people out, and that's exactly what we plan to do.
It has been our position since I became leader of this party that one of the greatest things that people have faced over the course of the last number of years is just a loss of certain freedoms. We seem to be more at the beck and call of large corporations, banks, and we seem to have lost a little bit of the control of our own lives. We have several platform ideas that actually deal with this whole issue of freedom. We have we would initiate actually a citizen-initiated referendum concept, where if there's a group of individuals that feel strongly enough about a particular issue and they want it to be brought to a binding referendum, they would just need to collect the required signatures, present it to the legislature, and then from that point, we would be required as government to present this as a referendum to the people of Saskatchewan. This could be on any issue. There would be a threshold of a certain number of signatures that would be required to initiate it, but it is our belief that this is one way that people can have more of a say. We also propose a day in the legislature for a person to actually address the Legislative Assembly themselves. This will do two things. It will ensure that both government and opposition members hear the concern. It'll be captured into Hansard, so it's there on the record. But it also is just a day in which the government can kind of step out of the shadows of the legislature for that one day and not just listening to each other talk, they can actually listen to their citizens appear before the chamber. And we think that that's a good way for the people of Saskatchewan to be able to address these issues. We also have in our platform recall legislation provisions, and we are looking for local volunteers to step up in areas where policing is a matter, and we would provide the training and the supports for volunteer sheriffs and peace officers to coexist in some communities where policing might be an issue. So we think that these issues.
If we have the privilege of forming the government after October 26, we're going to continue to be committed to sector engagement and planning to ensure that Saskatchewan suppliers benefit from public procurement wherever possible as we work together to keep Saskatchewan strong. We encourage Saskatchewan suppliers to bid on all Saskatchewan procurement. We developed a procurement transformation plan a number of years ago, which focused on best value procurement. I'm very proud to say that over the last 18 months, 90% of procurement by executive government has been done, has come from Saskatchewan companies. And over the last 12 months from the Crowns, 90% of things that can be procured from Saskatchewan have been procured by Saskatchewan. So we're having a lot of success in terms of supporting all people in Saskatchewan in terms of participating in the economy, making sure that we're making the appropriate investments in infrastructure especially as we move to recover from COVID. It's very important that people in Saskatchewan continue to be engaged in the economy, and with $7.5 billion investment that we're making in infrastructure over the next 2.5 years, the vast majority of which will benefit Saskatchewan companies. We've worked hard to ensure that Saskatchewan companies, local companies, are represented in the economy. That's not just good for those companies, it's of course good for their employees. When people are working, we've had a great number of procurements valued at almost $500 million, and as I said, over 90% of those procurements have gone to Saskatchewan companies. We work very hard to promote Saskatchewan companies when it comes to procurement. I'm responsible for Priority Saskatchewan, and again, that supports local suppliers in many ways, including supplier development, work to inform and align suppliers with the work that needs to be done in Saskatchewan, visiting suppliers, visiting facilities, and attending industry and supplier places of work. And so by ensuring that we are supporting Saskatchewan companies, we are ensuring that people go to work in Saskatchewan. We have a great record in job creation in Saskatchewan, and I think a lot of the work we've done in procurement has a great influence on that.
Solidarity is acceptance of the truth that because all peoples are part of the same human family, part of the one body of Christ, what happens to others affects us as well, regardless of difference in location or life circumstances. Solidarity is found in a commitment to the good of one's neighbor. The good of one is the good of all, and the other is as important as the self. Injustice done to another is an injustice that affects everyone. And Catholics stand in solidarity with the unique injustices and sufferings facing so many people in Saskatchewan, whether our Indigenous communities, our poorest neighbors, immigrants and refugees escaping persecution abroad, and those living in isolated communities in places like northern Saskatchewan, and the extraordinary challenges to human dignity they all face. We want to ask about this latter group for our next question. How does your party propose to work in partnership with the people of northern Saskatchewan to reduce suicide rates in their communities, address the suffering they face, and support local initiatives to build a better future for northern Saskatchewan residents?
What we need to do is not just be in solidarity with one another, but this province and where Buffalo Party stands is freedom again. We'll go back to the freedom. Everyone's free. It doesn't matter what race, what creed, what religion, ethnicity you may come from. You're from Saskatchewan, you are now Saskatchewan. We all need to work together to have a better future. And right now, we need to give the first and foremost thing is hope. A lot of people have lost a sense of hope and they feel hopeless. They feel that no one's out there for them, and we need to bring that back to the people. We need to do more for all of Saskatchewan, whether it's north, whether it's south, inner city, or rural. It does not matter at this moment in time because there is a lot of despair within this province. We need to get the economy going back again. We need to give people hope that the future is still there. There's still a future for everyone. And by giving hope and happiness and a prosperity and outlook that tomorrow will be a better day, you will have a better future for everyone, no matter who you are, or no matter where you live.
Within the first 100 days of being elected, I will be tabling legislation to ensure that we have clean drinking water in every single community in our province. I grew up in northern Saskatchewan and actually resided in an area that had frequent boil water advisories. I feel that the Sask Party and the NDP, who've both been in power for 10 years at a time in this province, should be embarrassed that they have not addressed this problem already. The problems, of course, extend even beyond the basics of clean drinking water, but that is key and must be addressed. We also need to have anti-suicide legislation. There was an attempt to have that tabled in Saskatchewan, and every single Sask Party MLA voted against it. This is an issue that has affected my life personally. I have been to far too many funerals of those who have taken their own lives. And in northern Saskatchewan, it's an epidemic. When you look at 40 women in the north who commit suicide between the age of 10 and 30, 1 in 30 will be non-Indigenous. So the Minister for Northern Affairs saying that suicide is not a Northern issue and not an Indigenous issue is clearly lying. We need clear anti-suicide legislation. We need supports in place so that people don't continue taking their own lives so young. The young men especially, I went to a series of funerals of young men who committed suicide on the same date, a number of years apart from one another, which was, of course, very difficult. But they had so much left to give. We need to support people. We need to support families, because Saskatchewan also has one of the highest child in care rates in the country. And this is often based on arbitrary judgments about how people are raising their families. And instead, we need to create better supports for those families, because removing children from their family structure is not good for society.
It's an issue that Saskatchewan New Democrats feel very passionately about and very strongly about. And we've been highlighting the issue of northern suicides to this government for the past couple of years, to very little response. Life was getting harder for northern families before the pandemic hit, and COVID-19 has made things even more difficult. We're committed to making the investments needed to make life better for all northern families. My colleague, Doyle Vermette, who was the MLA for Cumberland in northern Saskatchewan, tried to pass a suicide prevention law last session, which would allow for, it would have required the government to create a suicide strategy that would have actionable targets that the government would be held to account on, to ensure that suicide rates are reduced finally in northern Saskatchewan rather than going up. In fact, the bill was for all of the province, but Doyle speaks very passionately about all of the funerals he's had to go to in his home community of too many younger people who have lost their lives to suicide far too early in their lives. We are very committed to ensuring that a provincial suicide strategy happens in Saskatchewan, when we're one of the few provinces that don't have one. We need to work with northern communities and invest in the supports they need, because we're concerned about the approach that this government has been taking. We've committed $5 million to the suicide prevention strategy that will support young people struggling with mental health and addictions. We've also committed $10 million to act on the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And we've committed to closing the gap in health, employment, justice, and education between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. We also are committed to restoring the funding to the Northern Teacher Education Program, also known as NORTEP, and ensuring that First Nations schools receive equal funding in our province. Now is not the time to cut. We need to invest in the North, and we need to put people first.
Well, thank you for that question, and it's a very important one. As someone who has family in northern Saskatchewan, and some of them who actually are impacted by some of the societal issues that are going on up there, this is a very dear subject to me. One of the first things that we would do as a government is we would initiate a ministry responsible for the Truth and Reconciliation goals. We think that we understand that the federal government has been moving in this direction. We need a better provincial response and coordination so that the province can actually take part in some of the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations from that particular report. That is the first thing. The second thing that we need to do is just improve some of the infrastructure in our north. We need to improve transportation services and transportation up there. Roads are a big issue, and they connect some remote northern communities to the south. Even when you go into further into the north, we're looking at the requirements to upgrade airports and airstrips so that, again, people have that communication with southern communities as well. We need to involve bands and partnerships when it comes to dealing with issues of mental health and suicide prevention. It's not something that can be made in Regina. This is something we need to do in consultation with bands, northern communities, Métis communities, to try and solve the long-term impacts of this. The government of Saskatchewan commissioned after the Walsh shootings, they commissioned a company, a call center out of Prince Edward Island to act as their agency to deal with mental health issues, and people can phone into this call center. We thought that this was not enough. We need to actually involve the people of Saskatchewan and northern Saskatchewan in these decisions.
We have had a long conversation with respect to when I reviewed this question with respect to partnerships in northern Saskatchewan to reduce suicide rates, which seemed to be was the primary focus of this question. We have developed a suicide prevention model around the Pillars for Life, which was introduced by the minister responsible for rural and remote health. Certainly a document which we will continue to work on. It's a growing document. It's a living document. It requires the input from more and more people. I know that the Canadian Mental Health Association has supported this. We're making some significant investments, especially in rural Saskatchewan, to ensure that to the greatest extent possible, we can work with northern communities and northern leaders on this very, very important issue. I've had a long conversation with the Archbishop specifically around this issue. I happen to believe that the way to deal with this is not just the only way to deal with it, is to make sure that what we're doing is providing opportunities for youth in the north, for individuals in the north to participate, giving people a sense of purpose. And I think that working to expand the economy, while at the same time providing measures, monitoring by enhancing suicide protocols, by enhancing research and data and surveillance to support local suicide prevention strategies, those are important. But I really believe that one of the big focuses needs to be on ensuring that we are providing opportunities for the youth in the north to become involved in the community, to give them a sense of purpose. And we're doing some great work on this, not just with respect to the work that's being done by the health ministries, but as I mentioned before, I'm the minister responsible for Priority Saskatchewan, and we have set some goals at Priority Saskatchewan with respect to First Nations involvement in the economy when it comes to contracting. And we very much believe that providing those opportunities, enhancing educational opportunities in the north, is really the key here.
Justice and peace. The Church teaches that public administration must be oriented towards the service of citizens. Being at the service of its citizens, the state is the steward of the people's resources, which it must administer with a view to the common good. This is the fundamental purpose of government, according to Church teaching, to provide a legal and economic framework in which the common good can flourish, to respect both subsidiarity and solidarity. The state's intervention in the economic environment must be neither invasive nor absent, but commensurate with society's real needs. Central to the state's stewardship of the people's resources is its management of the provincial budget. How does your party propose to address the budgetary imbalances within our province resulting from the COVID-19 crisis? And how do you propose to steward the enormous fiscal resources of the state?
The Party wants to be the official opposition in this election. That is our goal. Our goal as official opposition is to hold the provincial government in an accountability they've never been at before. You said it, and we've said it before earlier in this interview, that governments are servants of the people and not people servants of the government. What we need to do to create more of a fiscal management within this province and get our budget back on track is we have to reduce the amount of spending that's going on by government right now. We're facing almost a $20 billion deficit in Saskatchewan, and there's no economy to pay for that. We need to change the view that government needs to keep getting in business and keep giving more and more subsidies, which all subsidies do is just taxpayers' money, because the government doesn't have money. They got to take it from you first. We look back at 2016 when the election happened then, and we see the economy wasn't great, and the election promises that were coming out of the current governing party at that time with a different leader was stating that we would not give any more money out because there is no more money to give. And that's where Buffalo Party stands as well, is that right now the economy is in really a tough spot, and we're looking, as a news article in Global News just a couple of days ago stated, that there's another economic lockdown coming up. And if that's going to happen, we're going to see more insolvencies and more bankruptcies, and we're going to just crush this economy. And that can't happen. We need to get better measurables and what's going on with COVID. The measurables shouldn't be a zero case count. That's never going to happen. COVID's here to stay. We have to learn how to live with it. We need to get to a measurable of hospitalizations. Once we use actual measurables that we can count on, which are hospitalizations, how many people are going in and out, the overbearing of our health system, then we can actually look at what we can do to open our economy back up and open our province back up so everyone can start making money right now. Can't give handouts anymore. There's no more money to come. And if they want to keep giving handouts, it's just going to be coming from everyone's pocket.
Right now, the budget of Saskatchewan is frequently balanced on the backs of the poor. This is unacceptable to me. I propose that it's often said that the sorts of policies that the Greens put forward are airy-fairy and not grounded in economics. I would instead say that not helping people at the lowest level of society and lifting them up hurts the economics of our province. When you leave situations that are problematic to a point where people are seeking care and help at sort of a crisis point and ending up in emergency rooms, frequently as an option of last resort, that is the most expensive level of care that we can look at as society. As well, the government of today has been able to spend $4 billion. They are proposing for an unnecessary Diefenbaker Dam expansion, which will further damage Saskatchewan southern waterways. $2 billion were spent on an unnecessary bypass around Regina. I'm not opposed to bypasses. Of course, that would be ridiculous. But my dad was in curb and gutter his whole life, and that is way over budget. $1.5 billion for a carbon capture and storage project that didn't work. So we as a province apparently have $7.5 billion to line the pockets of big industry. Instead, bringing in a guaranteed livable income, ensuring that we look after all the people of this province with dignity and respect, bringing in policies that actually help small individual businesses to start up, and knowing that when you do that and stimulate the economy on a grassroots ground level, it actually helps our economy as a whole, because tiny micro businesses, individuals, bringing people up to a level where they're not living in subsistence poverty means that those people are actually way more likely to spend their money here in Saskatchewan. They'll end up paying for daycare. They'll end up getting their house reshingled. They will keep putting that money back into the province. Whereas big business, you know what happens when you subsidize another giant business, say the Diefenbaker Dam expansion? That business is going to slide that check in their pocket and not spend it here.
Thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it a lot. Saskatchewan New Democrats will work from day one on transparent, well-planned return to fiscal health for the province. We will put people and families at the heart of our budget and ensure a system that is both fair and democratic. Now is the time more than ever to invest in people to get through these challenging times. Going forward, we will work with an expert panel to plan our path back to balanced budgets, including setting targets for net debt to GDP ratios and a focus on the investments that will deliver the most growth and the greatest long-term savings. We're concerned about the provincial deficit, but we're also worried about the deficits in our schools, the deficits in our hospitals, and the deficits in the bank accounts of ordinary Saskatchewan families. Now is not the time to cut, and we are committed to investing in the people of Saskatchewan. Thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it a lot. Saskatchewan New Democrats will work from day one on transparent, well-planned return to fiscal health for the province. We will put people and families at the heart of our budget and ensure a system that is both fair and democratic. Now is the time more than ever to invest in people to get through these challenging times. Going forward, we will work with an expert panel to plan our path back to balanced budgets, including setting targets for net debt to GDP ratios and a focus on the investments that will deliver the most growth and the greatest long-term savings. We're concerned about the provincial deficit, but we're also worried about the deficits in our schools, the deficits in our hospitals, and the deficits in the bank accounts of ordinary Saskatchewan families. Now is not the time to cut, and we are committed to investing in the people of Saskatchewan. Thank you so much for the question. I appreciate it a lot. Saskatchewan New Democrats will work from day one on transparent, well-planned return to fiscal health for the province. We will put people and families at the heart of our budget and ensure a system that is both fair and democratic. Now is the time more than ever to invest in people to get through these challenging times. Going forward,
That's a very good question. These have been pretty remarkable times, and in many respects, I give the government credit for how they have managed some of this whole COVID issue. It's been a particularly troublesome time for not only Saskatchewan's economy, but for the national and international economy. But really, all financial decisions all boil down to one thing. We need to let the private sector do what the private sector does. We need to get the government out of our economy, and we need to strive to balance our budget. If we continue to run massive debt like we have, we've only had 3 balanced budgets in 13 years of this government. One of those balanced budgets was balanced with loaned money. That means that we're more at the whim of world money markets than we should be. We need to balance our budget. We need to get out of the job-killing New West Trade Partnership. We need to cut sales taxes and put more money into the hands of consumers. And we need to make business taxes the lowest in Canada so that it will encourage our businesses to stay solvent in this time. We need to offer a manufacturer's tax credit, which is something in our platform, so that we can bring manufacturing jobs to Saskatchewan. We have a surplus of great space in this province, especially in some of our rural communities, that we can use to attract manufacturing to our province, and what we can do with the manufacturer's tax credit is, being that it's a tax credit, taxes get paid, and then they get a bonus for coming to Saskatchewan and working here. So we think that these are ways that we can address COVID, but also in the long term we can address the economic issues going forward.
You know, in terms of, and we look at this question in terms of the stewardship of the province with respect to the fiscal resources of the state, quite simply, our plan is to grow the economy. We're not going to resort to cuts, and we're not going to resort to reductions of services to do that. Our plan for growth is the blueprint for growing our economy. It's reported, the forecast that Saskatchewan will have the lowest debt to GDP in the country of Canada. And I think that augurs well for our continued improvement in the economy. As I've said before, the economy is the key really to everything in terms of what we do. So economic growth is going to fuel our recovery. It's going to give us the opportunities to continue to invest in healthcare, to invest in education, to invest in our social safety net, and to invest in the most vulnerable. I think the key here is to ensure that what we do is move as quickly as possible, and we've set a goal for 2024 to balance our budget. The balanced budget gives us the opportunity to do so much more than we would otherwise be able to do if we didn't have a balanced budget. And so moving toward that target, creating the economic opportunities that the people of Saskatchewan want, give us the opportunity and the advantage of ensuring that we meet the fiscal challenges, especially coming out of COVID. We would have had a balanced budget this year had it not been for COVID, and now with a $2.1 billion deficit, we have a challenge ahead of us, but we will meet that challenge by growing our economy and continue to advance and enhance the services that the people of Saskatchewan have come to expect from their government.
Why should Catholics vote for your party in this election?
Buffalo Party wants to be your official opposition. Currently, our governing body does not have an official opposition that's actually opposing them and holding them to a higher regard. The government needs to have more accountability. Buffalo Party wants to have that accountability. We can do it. We can prove to you that we can actually be an effective government. We don't just need to oppose everything, but we can make amendments to legislation. Buffalo Party wants to stand for your freedoms, for your rights. We want to stand for the people because our job is to serve you, the people. Buffalo Party wants to see less of a government, more free people, and allow the people to make the choices on their own being. We will be the official opposition. We will stand for your voice. We will be representing you on October 27th. Thank you. I'm Wade Sira with Buffalo Party.
Catholics should vote for my party because green values are Catholic values. Nonviolence. I've been a peace activist my entire life. As new leader of the Greens, I bring a long history of non-violent, peaceful social action into my repertoire. I was involved from the age of 13 years old with the Interchurch Uranium Action Cooperative in Saskatchewan. I spent a good portion of my high school years camped out at City Hall protesting the Gulf War. I have been strongly involved in social justice issues in the province. I spend all my free time running around. Just yesterday, a single mother, got a hold of me and she needed a food hamper, and I posted to my 10,000 person Facebook group that I run to try to help those in need. No one responded right away, so I emptied out my cupboards and ran over in the middle of an election campaign. These are green values. I have spent tons of time. I've walked from La Ronge, Saskatchewan down to the legislature protesting the proposed nuclear waste storage in Indigenous communities. I wore out 2 pairs of shoes, and so did my 8-year-old son and my mother, the same woman I talked about earlier who had to have her entire large bowel cut out, walked with us. These are green values. These are values that are reflected in the questions that you have asked today and that you want to see represented in the legislature. I am responsive. I believe in participatory democracy. If enough of you join my party, and I do have a lot of people, one of my living, breathing heroes is Dr. Jim Penna from Saskatoon, strong Catholic social justice visionary, and one of my personal living, breathing heroes. And so much of what he had to say to me as a teenager is reflected in what you see as the Green Party leader of today. He is literally one of the most amazing people I know. And so these are some of my heroes, and that is what I bring to the ledge.
Well, again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for giving me the chance to speak with you today. I hope I've given you a sense of the priorities of Saskatchewan New Democrats, our plan to reduce class sizes and reinvest in schools to ensure that our children have better learning opportunities and to make our schools safer, our plan to put Saskatchewan workers first by ensuring that Saskatchewan schools, roads, and health facilities are built by Saskatchewan workers and Saskatchewan corporations. Our plan to build the best home care system in Canada so that seniors can age in place with both dignity and security. And our plan to ensure that minimum wage earners, the majority of whom are women and many of whom support families, are paid a decent living wage by raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. I urge everyone that's watching to check out our website with our full platform, saskndp.ca/platform, to learn more about the plan we're putting forward in this election. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today and address some of the important questions facing the future of our province. And to all of you watching the forum, thank you so much for this opportunity again. And I also hope that you and your loved ones remain safe and healthy in the weeks and months ahead as we all continue to face this difficult and challenging time together. Thank you and take care.
We are the party that recognizes individual liberty, including that of the unborn, including that of the ill. We have a platform that's based upon giving more voice to all people who wish to champion change and wish to bring change to our province. We address in our platform the rights of healthcare workers to conscientiously object to labor, to work that goes against their moral compass. We address issues of age of consent for parents to permit procedures on minor children. Currently, that does not exist. I believe that we are the only, I believe, quite frankly, that I am, and I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that I am the only pro-life leader of a political party in Saskatchewan at this time. So I think that I have the moral and the I don't want to say I have the moral compass to do it, but I just want to say that I have the beliefs of the church at hand. I'm not Catholic. I am a practicing Anglican, but I do believe ultimately that we are in a case where the Word of God must be adhered to in our government.
Well, thanks very much. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity. As I mentioned before, 2 minutes really doesn't give a whole opportunity to have a full discussion with respect to some of these issues. But again, I'll return to the theme which I started with. And that's really an emphasis on ensuring that we support our economy. The economy is really the key to ensuring that we continue to provide and enhance the services that the people of Saskatchewan have come to expect from their government, making the appropriate investments at the appropriate times. You've seen the government over the last number of years make significant investments in education, not just with respect to operating capital, but with respect to facilities. Record investments in agriculture, record investments in healthcare and in highways. And these are the kinds of things which will help grow our economy, which will help feed our plan for growth, which is going to be key to ensuring that we can continue to enhance, as I've said before, enhance the services which the people of Saskatchewan have come to expect. So on election day, we would like the opportunity to continue to do what we have been doing since we had the privilege of forming government in 2007. And that's to provide the services that people have come to expect, continue to monitor the economy, make sure that we're doing what we can to ensure that our economy continues to grow, that our jobs continue to grow, that our population through a number of ways continues to grow. These are all key measures. They're all key metrics in ensuring that we have a strong economy. And as I've said, the economy is really the key to everything if we want to continue to ensure that people of Saskatchewan get the services and the resources that they need. And so on the 26th of October, we're asking for the support of the Saskatchewan people to ensure that we can continue to do what we have been doing since 2007. And our record is clear.